We hear about crimes all the time, but what happens when someone does something wrong to you, but it's not exactly a crime? Well, there's a whole different side of the law that deals with just that. And today, we're diving into it. The Law of Torts.
I mean, really think about it. That fender bender in the parking lot, a nasty rumor that hurts your reputation, maybe even a neighbor who keeps cutting across your yard. These things cause real harm, right? But they probably won't land anyone in prison. So, what are your options?
This is exactly where tort law steps in. See, when one person's action or inaction causes harm to someone else, the legal system has an answer. That isn't criminal court. It's called a civil wrong. And the legal name for that wrong? It's a tort.
All right, so we've thrown this word tort around, but let's get a really clear idea of what it means. What exactly is a tort? And honestly, where did this funny sounding word even come from?
Well, the origin of the word gives you the perfect mental picture. Tort comes from the Latin word tortum, which means to twist. And that's exactly what a tort is. It's a twisted act. It's a departure from the straight, correct way we're all supposed to act towards each other.
Okay, so a legal scholar named Winfield put it a bit more formally. Now, that sounds super academic, I know, but let's break it down. That key phrase, duty primarily fixed by the law, all that means is that we, as members of society, have these unspoken responsibilities to each other, like a duty to drive carefully. A tort happens when someone breaks or breaches one of those duties. And in any tort case, you've got a standard cast of characters. First up is the plaintiff. That's the person who says, hey, I was harmed, and they're the one filing the lawsuit. Then you have the defendant, who is accused of causing that harm. And if the defendant is found responsible, the law has this great name for them, the tortfeasor. It literally just means the wrongdoer. Now, this is probably the biggest point of confusion for most people, the difference between a tort and a crime. And while some actions can actually be both, it's so important to understand that in the eyes of the law, they are two totally different things. So let's put them side by side. A crime is considered a wrong against society as a whole. That's why the government, like the state or the district attorney, is the one bringing the case in criminal court. But a tort, that's a private wrong, just between individuals, and it's handled in civil court. And check out that last point, it's a huge deal. For most crimes, you have to prove intent. But for a lot of torts, like just being careless, intent doesn't matter at all. Okay, enough with the theory. Let's make this real. How does all of this tort stuff actually show up in our everyday lives? Let's walk through a few common examples you'll probably recognize. And remember that whole breach of duty thing we talked about? That's the golden thread connecting all of these examples. It all starts with that basic idea. We have responsibilities to each other, and when someone drops the ball, a tort might have happened. Let's start with this all too familiar scene because it represents the most common tort by far, negligence. The law says every single driver has a duty to be reasonably careful on the road. So when someone gets distracted, maybe they're texting, maybe they're just not paying attention, and causes a crash, they have violated that duty. That, right there, is negligence. Now, let's switch gears. Think about a different kind of damage, one that isn't physical. Imagine someone says this, and it's completely made up, it's just words, but those words could absolutely destroy that cafe's business, right? Yep, that nasty rumor, that's a perfect example of defamation. We all have a duty not to make up false statements that hurt someone's reputation. If it's spoken, it's called slander. If it's written down, it's called libel. But either way, if it's not true and it causes real harm, the person who said it has committed a tort. And for a last example, let's talk about something we can all understand. Your space, your property, your land. The law is really clear about your right to control who comes and goes. And that brings us to the tort of trespass. The duty here could not be simpler. You can't go on someone else's property without their permission, period. Even something that seems totally minor, like taking a shortcut across your neighbor's lawn every day, legally speaking, that's a trespass. Okay, so we know what a tort is. We've seen some examples. But so what? Why should we care about this whole area of law? Let's zoom out and look at the big picture. At its very heart, tort law is about empowering you, the individual. If someone else's wrongful act has hurt you, you don't just have to live with it. This is the legal path you can take to hold them accountable and to get compensation for your medical bills, lost income, or damaged property. And on a much bigger scale, tort law is what pushes all of us to be a little more careful. It's like the rule book for society. It enforces that unwritten contract we all have to just think for a second about how our actions might affect the people around us. So, when you really boil it all down, the law of torts is about so much more than just lawsuits. It's a huge, ongoing conversation about our duties to each other, and it leaves us with this big, fundamental question, one the law tries to answer every single day. Just how responsible should we be for one another?